Before I tell you how everything fell apart, there's something you need to understand. There is no pain sharper than realizing that even when you give your all, it still isn't enough. Sometimes, the deepest wounds don't come from accidents or harsh words spoken by strangers. They come from home, from the people you raised, fed, protected, the same ones who once held your hand with childlike trust, and now can barely look you in the eye. My name is Eleanor Whitman. I'm 67 years old, and this is the story of how I was forgotten by my own family, and how in the end that turned out to be my salvation. It was early March in a small town called Maplewood, tucked away in rural Michigan. The mornings were still cold enough that you could see your breath in the air. That kind of cold that stiffens your joints and quiets the streets, but not quite cold enough to keep people inside. I remember that day perfectly. I was in the garden, pulling the last of the dead petals from the daisies that hadn't survived the winter. The scent of damp soil and lifeless grass stirred up old memories of warm springs, of laughter echoing on the porch, of a time when my life was full. That's when the phone rang. Daniel, my only son. My heart clenched. He hadn't called in. Over 3 weeks. Ever since he married Amanda, our conversations had grown shorter, more spaced out, more polite. Civil, yes, but soulless. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice low, too careful. "Daniel?" I tried to sound cheerful, but I could feel the tremble in my own voice. "How are you, sweetheart?" "I'm good. I just wanted to check in on you. I'd be lying if I said it didn't move me. That simple concern, even if rehearsed, was so rare, I almost believed it. I'm doing fine. Keeping busy with the garden, going through some of Dad's things," I replied, even though it wasn't true. I hadn't touched Harold's things since the funeral. The scent of his shirts alone could bring me to my knees. But Daniel didn't need to know that. He always thought I was made of steel. "Mom, you've been alone for a while now. And, well, Amanda and I have been talking." He hesitated. I felt it. The kind of pause that comes before something already decided. "We were thinking maybe you could come live with us for a bit." The world tilted, just for a second. "Me? Move in with them? It'd be good for the kids," he added quickly. "They miss you, and we've got a spare room." There was something off in the way he said it, a rush maybe, a strange tone, but a grandmother's heart is easily swayed. And just the thought of being closer to my grandkids warmed my chest. "I'll think about it, Daniel. I promise I will." And I did. For a full week, I wandered through the quiet halls of my home. I stared at the dusty picture frames, at Harold's empty armchair, at the teacups that hadn't held tea in months, and I asked myself, am I still needed somewhere? If you've ever felt that way, forgotten, alone, but still overflowing with love to give, then you'll understand why I made that choice. I packed my bags. Not all of them, just the essentials. I took one last look at the house where I had lived for nearly 4 decades, and with a lump in my throat, I walked away. But before I continue this story, may I ask something of you? If something in these words touched your heart, if you've ever lived through something like this, or know someone who has, please subscribe to the channel. Your presence gives strength to stories like mine, and your voice in the comments. It matters. The road to Cedar Falls, where Daniel lived with Amanda and the kids, was lined with tall, barren trees, their naked branches reaching up like hands begging the gray sky for help. The landscape felt like a mirror of myself, beautiful from a distance, but stripped bare on the inside. I drove slowly, as if dragging out the trip could somehow delay the discomfort growing in my chest. A mix of hope and caution. Hope of course, because of the boys, my grandsons were my soft spot, and caution for all the things I didn't know, but could already sense. I arrived around 3 in the afternoon. No movement on the porch, no eager faces in the window. I parked the car and sat for a few seconds, hands still on the steering wheel. The engine was off, but my heart was still rumbling. I knocked twice on the front door, loud enough to be heard, but not enough to seem desperate. The door creaked open slowly. Amanda. She wore a loose sweatshirt, her hair pulled into a messy bun, and her phone clutched in hand like it was glued there. "Oh, you're early," she said, stepping back without a smile. Her tone was flat, almost uneasy. "Good afternoon, sweetheart." I forced a smile, the kind of smile you rehearse your whole life for moments like this. I figured I'd leave before the rain started. She didn't respond. She just turned and walked inside, leaving me with my bags on the porch. The smell of the house hit me the moment I stepped in. Diapers, takeout food, and an overly sweet air freshener, maybe trying to mask the chaos. Toys were scattered across the living room floor. A loud cartoon blared from the TV. I tried to smile at the scene, like someone trying to blend into a party they weren't invited to. Daniel came down the stairs holding the baby. He gave me a quick hug, one of those touches that ends before it really begins. "We set up the guest room for you, Mom. It's not perfect, but it should be fine for now," he said, avoiding eye contact. I nodded and followed him. The guest room was anything but ready. Boxes stacked in the corners, a broken lamp, and instead of a bed, a deflated air mattress. No closet, no dresser, not even a spot to hang my clothes. "It's just temporary, of course. We'll figure something better out later," Daniel mumbled before walking off with the baby in his arms. I stood there alone, taking in the improvised space. I took a deep breath, trying to ignore the dampness in the air and the buzzing of a fly trapped against the window. I placed my bag on the floor and sat down on the mattress, which groaned beneath me like it was complaining too. "You did this for the grandkids," I whispered to myself. "They need you. They miss you." But something inside me knew. This move wasn't made out of love. It was made out of convenience, a favor dressed up as a kind gesture, a shelter that felt more like it was for them, and less for me. That night, lying on the unstable mattress, I heard every step across the floor, every laugh from the couple's room, every breath that wasn't mine. And there, in the dark, I felt for the first time that I had entered a world that wasn't mine, and maybe never would be. But I stayed. Because that's what women like us do. We keep going, even when everything around us tries to erase us. The next morning, I woke up before everyone else. Not because I slept well, far from it. The air mattress had deflated during the night, leaving me sunken in the middle like a soup bowl. My back ached in silence, and my knees cracked as I stood up, as if they too were trying to warn me. "This place isn't yours." I made my way to the kitchen with quiet, careful steps. I didn't want to disturb anyone. I just wanted to make a good impression. I wanted to be helpful. I put water on to boil and started making pancakes, Daniel's favorite when he was a little boy. The sweet smell of the batter rising through, the air pulled at memories of better mornings when he'd come running into the kitchen in his pajamas, hair a mess, eyes bright with hunger and love. But in this house, that smell didn't bring anyone. Amanda came downstairs around 8, phone in one hand, a tired look on her face. "You didn't have to do that," she said, glancing at the pancakes like they were a bother, not a gesture. "Oh, it's no trouble, sweetheart." "It's my pleasure," I replied, trying to keep my voice gentle. She grabbed a mug, poured herself some coffee, and walked out of the kitchen without another word. No thank you. No smile, just the dry sound of her footsteps heading back. Upstairs. Daniel didn't show up until almost an hour later, already dressed for work, his oldest son's backpack slung over his shoulder. He kissed my forehead in a rush, grabbed a pancake with his hand, and said, "Thanks, Mom," before walking out. He didn't sit down. He didn't even look me in the eyes, Right there in the middle of the kitchen, between the coffee pot and the salt shaker, I felt a heaviness settle in. A silence that screamed. Not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that speaks of being left out. In the days that followed, I tried to find my place in their routine. I folded laundry. I washed dishes. I picked up toys. I bought fresh fruit. I made soup when the little one had a fever, but no matter what I did, Amanda always seemed to find something wrong. A light left on too long, a towel not hung right, a casual comment about dinner. "Could you maybe not use the washer during the day?" she said one afternoon, eyes glued to her phone. "The electric bill's been ridiculous." "Oh, of course. I'm sorry. It was just a small load." "Uh-huh," she replied, already leaving the kitchen. Every word from her carried invisible weight, little cuts that, alone, wouldn't hurt, but together, they bled. Daniel was always busy. His job as a sales rep kept him on the phone or out of the house all day. At night, he hid in the garage with a beer in hand and a distant stare. When I tried to talk to him, it felt like I was speaking to a stranger. "Everything's fine, Mom. We're just a little stressed. 2 young kids, bills. You get it, right?" "I do, Daniel. I went through all that with your father. Without any help at all," I wanted to say. But I didn't. I swallowed the words like I had so many times before. Deep down, I knew. This wasn't an act of closeness. It was strategy, a convenient way to have someone hold things together, watch the kids, keep the house in order, take some emotional weight off their shoulders. I wasn't a guest. I was a resource. That night, I lay back down on the inflatable mattress, which seemed to deflate faster with every passing day, and stared at the ceiling. My heart felt heavy as stone. I was fading away. And no one seemed to notice, but I noticed, and that was the beginning of everything. There was one night in particular I'll never forget. I had prepared a full dinner, roast lamb with rustic potatoes, almond rice, and vanilla pudding for dessert. Cooking had always been my love language. When words failed me, I let the scent of warm food speak what my heart couldn't express. Set the table like I used to in the old days. Fresh tablecloth, folded napkins, the nice dishes that had been packed away for far too long. I felt a childlike joy as I lit a candle in the center. I wondered if they would notice the effort. Daniel sat down first. He looked tired, as always, shoulders slumped, brow furrowed. He glanced at his phone, read something, and placed it next to his plate. Amanda arrived about 10 minutes later, dragging her feet, her face unreadable. She didn't even glance. At the table. "What is this?" she asked. "I made lamb." "I thought it might be nice to switch things up a bit," I said, trying to sound light and pleasant. She sighed, resting her weight on the back of the chair. "Next time, just let me know." "I don't eat red meat," she said flatly. Then she walked to the pantry, grabbed a protein bar, and left the kitchen chewing. I stood there, frozen. I gripped my fork and forced a smile in front of Daniel, who didn't react. He just muttered, "She had a rough day." But what about me? I thought. What about my days? Did anyone here even stop to think what it feels like when love is treated like a burden? I ate in silence. Each bite tasted bitter. The food had lost its flavor, and the candles, once romantic, now only flickered in the awkward air between us. After everyone went to bed, I stayed behind in the kitchen, staring at the untouched pudding on the table. I watched the flickering candlelight dance across the caramel glaze. I thought about Harold. He would have said something. He would have looked me in the eyes. He would have held my hand beneath the table. I washed the dishes slowly, the only sound being the rush of water and my own breath. The night outside was freezing, and the wind made the tree branches tap against the window like fingers begging to be let in. But the coldest part was inside me. The next morning, Amanda found me in the hallway. "Can you please turn off the bathroom heater after you use it? It's costing too much," she said as she passed by. Her voice wasn't harsh, but it carried that constant edge of impatience. A way of reminding me I wasn't really welcome. I was just an inconvenience wrapped in the disguise of help. Nodded, hiding the lump rising in my throat. That afternoon, I sat down in the makeshift room and opened my memory box. Old photographs. Little notes Daniel wrote me as a boy. A card from Harold, handwritten in shaky letters. "To my warrior. Always by your side." The tears came without warning. Long, silent tears soaking my lap as I held that card in both hands like it was a piece of my own heart. I had lost my husband. I had lost my home. I had lost my place. And now, I was slowly losing my voice. And still, I stayed. Maybe because women of my generation were taught to stay, to endure, to swallow. But something in me had started to awaken, something I had forgotten for a very long time. I am also a daughter of God, and He did not create me to be invisible, not to be disposable. The days that followed were like fog, not light, not dark, just cloudy on the inside. I kept myself busy folding clothes that weren't mine, warming bottles, picking up scattered toys, as if each small task gave me a breath, a reason, an excuse to keep staying. Maybe if I cooked better, smiled, more, spoke less, maybe then I'd be loved in return, or at least tolerated with a little more kindness. But kindness never came. One Thursday night, exhausted after calming the youngest through nearly an hour-long tantrum, I served dinner, a simple meal, but made with care. Amanda sat at the table, phone propped in front of her, scrolling like I wasn't even there. Daniel ate mechanically, eyes fixed on his laptop. The boys argued and left the table before finishing. The tension in the room was so thick it felt like it had weight. That's when I dared to break the silence. "Have you ever thought about turning off the screens during dinner? Maybe if we were more present, the boys would eat better." That was all. Just a suggestion. A moment of care. Amanda looked up, slowly, as if something inside her had tightened. "You're always making comments like that, Eleanor," she said, her voice low but sharp. "Like we don't know how to run our own home. Like you're here saving everyone." My fork froze in midair. "That's not what I meant. I was just—" She cut me off, dropping her utensils with a loud clatter. "You talk too much, and help. Too little. Who's really contributing here?" Her words hit like a slap. My face flushed hot, my hands went cold, and for the first time in a very long time, I couldn't respond. Daniel said nothing. He didn't even look at me. He just kept eating as if nothing had happened. As if the woman belittling me in front of the children was just another part of the background noise. I got up quietly, picked up my plate and washed it under the faucet, my breath unsteady. Down the hallway, I stepped into the room they gave me, if it could even be called a room, and closed the door gently behind me. I sat on the bare mattress. The plastic lining creaked beneath me, and the sound echoed in my chest like a muffled cry. I looked around. Nothing in that room was mine. No photographs, no pillow that smelled like home. It felt like living in an emotional storage unit, a temporary holding space for someone who didn't deserve to stay. I felt my body tremble, not from cold, from sorrow, a deep, old sorrow, swollen, suffocating, and a voice inside me, quiet but steady, finally spoke. "You're not welcome here. You're just convenient." That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, staring at nothing, my hands folded in my lap as if trying to hold together the pieces that were starting to fall apart. And before the sun came up, something crystal clear settled in my chest, like a lone star breaking through a clouded sky. I was going to leave. They didn't know it yet. Not even I knew exactly when. But the goodbye had already begun inside me. The next day looked like so many others on the outside. But inside, something had shifted. It wasn't anger. It wasn't impulse. It was a decision, calm, steady, and finally, mine. I made breakfast like I always did, but my movements were slower, more deliberate. I watched each gesture as if it were the last. The butter sliding across the toast, the scent of fresh brewed coffee, the quiet clink of droplets falling from the pot. Small things I had done for years without thought, now quietly dressed, as goodbyes. Daniel passed by me with a quick, "Good morning," never making eye contact. Amanda didn't show up at all. After breakfast, I went to the room, opened my suitcase, and began folding the few clothes I had brought with me, not hurried. Not angry, but with a strange kind of peace, like someone who knows they've reached the end of a road and no longer needs anyone's permission to leave it. That's when I saw it, my suitcase, already packed, already zipped, standing by the door. My heart paused. They knew. Amanda, Daniel. Someone had already made the decision that my stay was over. They hadn't bothered to say it, just packed up my things and left them outside the room, like something returned, no longer wanted. I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stayed still. My heart beat slow, but steady. I was no longer the woman begging for space. I was no longer the mother hoping for appreciation in exchange for love. I was someone else now. I was free. That afternoon, I loaded my suitcase into the car with steady hands and a straight back. I didn't slam the door. I didn't leave bitter notes, just one simple line written on a scrap of white paper in cursive, the kind I'd practiced back in Catholic school. "Thank you for having me," and I left before the sun rose. The sky was clear, but my heart cloudy. Driving back to Maplewood felt like crossing a bridge between two versions of myself, the woman I had been and the one just beginning to emerge. I arrived home at 8 in the morning. The gate creaked as it opened. The old porch groaned beneath my steps, and when I opened the door, the smell of time wrapped around me like a blanket, the scent of those old curtains, of the laundry soap I always used, of Harold's dresser drawers. Everything was right where I had left it, as if time had been waiting for me to return. Walked through each room, brushing my fingers along the furniture, touching the walls like skin, my bed, my teacups, my pictures, and there, in the silence and the dust, I came back to life. Before unpacking, I went to the kitchen, opened my banking app, and reviewed my finances. I tapped through every automatic transfer to Daniel. My fingers trembled, but my heart did not. One by one, I canceled them. Click, click, click. I canceled the abuse. I canceled the silence. I canceled the role of crutch. That night, I sat at my own dining table with a simple meal and a lit candle, not to impress anyone, but just for me. And for the first time in months, I ate in peace. The first week back in my house tasted like awakening, not the kind that comes with alarms and chaos, but a quiet sort of rebirth. Like the earth after a rainfall, still damp but already beginning to bloom again. I spent hours cleaning every corner, not because the house was dirty, but because I needed to reconnect with it, with the walls that had witnessed my youth, my marriage, Daniel's first steps. Every piece of furniture seemed to speak to me, and every object gave me back a little piece of the woman I had forgotten I was. But even in the comfort of home, I missed them, the grandkids, their tiny hands tugging at my arm, their unfiltered questions, their tight hugs in the middle of the day. They were innocent. They didn't know. They couldn't help being caught in a home where love was used like currency. So one Saturday afternoon, I bought 2 brand new tablets. I chose carefully, added educational games, children's books, and placed each one in a soft leather case. Navy blue for Jake, forest green for Liam. I wrote a note by hand. Even from far away, I'm always with you. With love, Grandma. I paid for express shipping. I wanted them to arrive quickly. Days later, I saw their smiling faces in one of Amanda's Instagram stories, holding the tablets. I wasn't tagged. There was no thank you message, no call. But I knew they got them, and those smiles, they were enough, at least for now. That evening, while making chamomile tea, something stirred inside me. A feeling. A forgotten instinct. I went to the study, turned on my computer, and opened my banking app. Just out of curiosity, I started scrolling through my statements. And there, hidden among the numbers, was something odd. An old alert from 2 months ago. I clicked, a large withdrawal, made by Daniel. Nothing too surprising. Until I saw where it went. Not the mortgage. I kept digging, opened older statements, reviewed past transactions. It was like pulling on a thread that never ends. Repeated. Transfers to a generic company name. I Googled it, an online gambling platform. My stomach turned. It wasn't just that I had been used. I had been deceived. Daniel, my son, burning money while telling me he needed help paying the electric bill, buying milk for the kids. He had lied, hidden things, manipulated. I closed the laptop, sat in the dark living room, hands folded in my lap. The only light was the soft blue glow of the screen. And there, in that thick silence, I didn't cry. There were no tears left, only something new, hard, sharp, resentment. Not the loud kind, not the kind that breaks dishes or screams through walls. It was quiet, cold, precise, the kind that appears when you realize your love was used as a ladder. That your sacrifice became someone else's excuse for addiction and cowardice. And in that moment, I knew. Nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, I opened a new bank account, moved every last penny, closed the old one, canceled every card linked to his name, changed the passwords, changed the locks, changed myself. After everything broke, the bond, the trust, the illusion, what was left was silence, but not the heavy kind that had followed me since Harold's death. This was a different kind of silence, cleaner, clearer, a kind of emptiness that didn't suffocate, but made room for me. I deleted my Facebook account, blocked Daniel's number, turned off notifications, set my phone aside like someone finally letting go of a chain. I didn't want to hear any more requests, no more justifications, no more apologies that only came when the need became too big to ignore. I started walking every morning, 20 minutes, around the same neighborhood where I'd lived my whole life, but now, with different eyes. I saw the trees that had always been there, heard the birds, noticed the neighbor watering his garden at exactly 6 a.m. The world hadn't changed. I had. For the first time in years, I sought out a therapist. I walked into her office with a tight chest, trembling hands, as if asking for help was some kind of confession of weakness. But it only took 3 sessions for me to realize it wasn't weakness. It was the beginning of healing. I cried a lot. I cried for Harold, who silenced me with his emotional absence for so many years. I cried for Daniel, who saw me as a wallet, not a mother. I cried for Amanda, who never once saw me as a person. And I cried for me, especially for me. I told my story, fully, out loud. I talked about the sacrifices no one noticed, the times I went to bed hungry so my child could eat, the sleepless nights caring for him when he had a fever, the car I sold to pay his college tuition, the bills I covered to help with his mortgage. All of it, and still I was called a burden. My therapist didn't give me answers, but she looked at me. Really looked at me, and that was enough for something inside me, a forgotten version of myself, to begin waking up. One afternoon, I climbed up to the attic and found my old sewing machine, still carrying the scent of time, of fabric, of devotion. The same one I had used to make Daniel's Halloween costumes when he was little. The same one I abandoned when Harold got sick. I cleaned it, oiled it, tested it, and I began to sew. At first it was torn towels, then dishcloths, then bags, aprons, baby blankets. I opened a small online shop. No big dreams, just something that was mine, a little corner of dignity. To my surprise, people ordered, left sweet messages like, "Reminds me of my grandma's embroidery. Do you still take custom requests? Thank you. This is the most beautiful piece I've ever owned." Each order felt like a petal falling off the weight of resentment. I started a new notebook, hardcover, blank pages. On the first line, I wrote in bold black ink, "I am not a burden. I am not invisible. I am not disposable." And just beneath it, "I am a woman who deserves peace." That night, I sewed until late, the hum of the machine, the scent of new fabric, the warmth of the desk lamp. Everything around me whispered that I was still capable, that despite it all, I was still whole. I just needed distance to remember. Somewhere on the other side, their world was starting to fall apart. I could feel it, in the silence, in the lack of contact, but I didn't look back. I didn't call. I didn't offer help, because I had learned love is not a cage, and help without respect is abuse. The phone rang on a Tuesday night. Was folding freshly ironed clothes, the radio playing softly, letting the house breathe in that comforting scent of clean fabric and lavender. It was a simple task, ordinary, but in that moment it filled me in a way that nothing had in a very long time. The screen flashed a name I had ignored for weeks. Daniel. Something inside me said, "Answer." "Hello?" My voice was calm, but steady. On. The other end, silence. And then, his voice, lower than I remembered. "Mom." Just that whisper, and my heart clenched. But I remained silent. "I need to see you." "I'll be home tomorrow," I said, and I hung up. At 4 o'clock. The next day, I heard his tires crunching the gravel in the driveway. I looked through the window. Not the same car. This one was an old sedan, dents on the sides, a cracked headlight. Daniel stepped out slowly, walking like he was carrying a mountain on his back. When I opened the door, I gasped. He was thin. Deep, dark circles under his eyes, his beard unkempt. But what struck me most was his gaze, stripped bare, without the defenses he used to wear like armor. "Can I come in?" I nodded and stepped aside. He sat on the couch with the posture of a boy, head bowed, hands clasped in his lap. "I messed everything up, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I lied. I used you. I hit rock bottom." I stood in front of him, still, waiting. He took a deep breath. "I'm addicted to online gambling. I thought I had control. I didn't. It started small. Then it became the only way I knew how to cope. With the stress, the pressure, Amanda, the kids, life." For the first time, he was telling the truth. But I already knew. Amanda's thinking about moving back to her mother's. We're 2 months behind on the mortgage. The boys, they ask about you. His voice cracked. "I need help, just one last time. I promise." I raised my hand, a calm, firm gesture. He stopped. "Not today," I said. His eyes widened, stunned. "I'm not saying never," I continued. "I'm saying not today. Because before I help you, you need to understand what it cost me to be sitting here in this room, alone. After everything I did for you." He looked down. A lump in his throat kept him from speaking. I loved you completely. I gave myself up. I sacrificed. I showed up. I was humiliated in your house. And you let it happen. I know, Mom, he whispered. I know now. Please forgive me. Forgiveness isn't a request, I replied. It's a process. And that process starts with you getting up. On your own. For the first time. He nodded, eyes filled with tears. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He simply understood. 10 minutes later, he walked out through the same door he came in. And when I closed the door behind him, I didn't cry. I smiled. A small smile, painful, but full of dignity, because finally, for the first time, I had chosen myself. 3 weeks passed after that conversation. No calls, no requests, no guilt-tripping, and surprisingly, it didn't hurt. At first, it felt strange, like the sound of silence after a storm. But little by little, I realized that absence was freedom. I used that time to keep going with what I had restarted. I sewed more than ever. Orders came in from all over the country. A woman from California wrote to me and said that the apron I sent her smelled like sweet memories of my grandmother. I started new journals. I wrote about myself, about the girl I once was, the mother I became, the woman who, at some point, forgot who she was, to be everything for everyone else, and who, finally, had come back to herself. Then, on a cold winter morning, Daniel knocked on my door. His hair was trimmed, beard neat, still thin, still tired eyes. But something was different. He looked whole. I've been going to meetings, he said, stepping inside. Tuesdays and Saturdays. I've been clean for 24 days. I nodded with a soft smile. I sold the SUV, closed the credit cards, picked up a night shift delivering groceries to catch up on bills. I made a plan. And he pulled an envelope from his backpack and handed it to me. Inside, a rough budget, a payment plan, a request for help understanding the terms. I need structure, Mom, not just your money. I need your experience, your clarity, if you're willing. He wasn't asking me to save him. He was asking me to teach him how to walk. In that moment, I saw the boy I once cradled in my arms, and the man who might finally be willing to grow up. I took a deep breath, walked to the bookshelf, grabbed a folder I had already prepared, conditions, deadlines, a list of rehab clinics, and a clear outline of how I would help. One time only. These are my terms, I said, handing it over. He read, in silence. Tears filled his eyes, not from shame, from gratitude. I accept, he said. For the first time in this whole story, there was an agreement. In the weeks that followed, I watched Daniel stick to every step. He worked hard, came home sweaty and tired, but with his head held high. I saw Amanda pull away, maybe from fear, maybe from pride, but he stayed, for the kids, for himself. Then one day, he called. Mom, I rented a duplex, small, simple, but it's mine. My name on the lease, my furniture, my responsibility. And then, with a steady voice, he added, You taught me how to walk, the day you finally let go of my hand. I hung up the phone, heart full. That night, I made my favorite meal. Used the good china, the plates reserved for special occasions. Lit a candle in the center of the table, played soft music. I sat at the table, with myself, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt whole. Dear listener, if you've made it this far, I want you to take a deep breath right now. Close your eyes for a moment and feel the truth in these words. You are not invisible. You are not weak. You are not alone. You are made of deep, unshakable roots. And even when others try to bend you, shrink you, or silence you, you remain. If this story touched your heart, if you saw a part of yourself reflected in this woman's journey, let your voice be heard. Write in the comments what you felt, what you lived, what you learned, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It might seem like a small act, but it's how stories of strength, dignity, and rebirth get shared. Stories like this, stories like yours, you deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, and never again to be discarded. Which part of this story moved you the most? Tell me in the comments. I'm listening. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, because your strength, even in silence, deserves to be celebrated.